Good evening, my name is Ollie Mould. I am a lecturer in geography at Royal Holloway, University of London. I'm academic, and as an academic, I have a bit of license to be critical and to be the fly in the soup, which is what I'm going to try and do today as constructively as I possibly can. Because I think one of the some of the key words that come out of the idea of a playful city, obviously being playful, but also being creative. And I just want to sort of problematise those two words, if I can, just for now. So what do we think about when we think about creativity or the creative city? Now, the term creative city has been around for a number of years, since about 1995, when people like Charles Landry discussed it as a policy idea. And now we think about the creative city with a capital C as something that is a policy realm, but it's something that has particular characteristics, such as cultural quarters, usually a nice bike infrastructure, but usually has sort of tropes that can be replicated around the world. Now, that's great, and that's fine, and we've seen some amazing examples of that already. However, we can't ignore the problems that that generates for a lot of the people that exist already in these cities. It has often, if done badly, has gentrifying properties. It can often displace people, and it can deter people from using that space in perhaps ways which saw them survive in that space. I'm thinking of particularly, homeless communities often get pushed out, social housing on much larger scales as well. So I want to problematise how we think about creativity, because there's a much more democratic version of creativity, which we see in the cities all around us, some of the examples which we've seen already today. Some of the subcultures that I've been looking at include skateboarding, parkour, which I'm sure Sebastian will talk about in a minute. But when you think about skateboarding, skateboarders for me are some of the most creative people that you can envision in the city, precisely because they see the city around them as a place to explore, as a place to perform tricks on, to grind on. We saw that rail earlier on, which Mark showed us with the sort of weaponized knobbing across the top of it. These are the kinds of things that skateboarders come across, and really kind of bemoan planning in that respect. Now, often that's done for good reasons, for health and safety reasons, for any other kinds of legal reasons. But what about a city that sort of actually embraces that kind of creative action? What about cities that actually leave spaces that are unplanned? Now, the skateboarders in London, I'm sure you'll be aware, over a few years ago, battled very vociferously to save the space under the South Bank Centre, which they won. It was about an 18-month campaign. I helped out on the campaign a bit, and one of the good things that Boris Johnson did was to allow that space to stay. Now, one of the reasons they fought so hard for it was because in the 70s, when they first appropriated that space, they saw it as a space that was almost perfect for skateboarding, even though it wasn't designed that way. It was actually designed, as many of you will know, with the archigram ideas in mind, that playful idea about leaving a space open for play. But the skateboarders saw it as a space purely for them. It was, if you do skateboard, it is a perfect place. The original specifications of the site, anyway. And after many years, they fought for the site, and they managed to reclaim it as a site for skateboarding. Now, that's the kind of creativity which comes from a subcultural background. It comes from people, skateboarders, let's face it, they're quite counter-cultural, anti-social to a certain extent, but they're creative. They're no less creative than some of the artists and some of the placemaking which we see around us. It's just framed socially in a very different way. With the case of the South Bank and many other places where skateboarders are ostracised as deviant or antisocial. Why is that the case? And I just want to problematise that sometimes, because I think that there's a long history of being playful in the city. You look back to the Situationists and New Babylon and all these ideas about, these theoretical ideas about people playing in the city. We've lost that in the modern day. We've lost that under sort of the way the city is being built at the moment. That play has to take on a particular characteristic. We saw with those images that Mark put up, that play has a very specific kind of idea. There are many, many examples around the city, subcultures that I look at, also just simple things like desire lines, those kind of lines that people take across a piece of grass for an easier route. They're not going the way that people have suggested. And the city is littered with these kinds of examples. We just need to know where to look for them, how to amplify them, and how to use them as democratic means of the city. So what I would like to for you to take home today, if there's one thing, is to sort of rethink what we mean by a creative city. Is it a city that is purely something where we sort of passively consume the city, or is it an idea where we actively create it ourselves? Thank you very much.